There's a very important film that came out in 1963 that proves that we weren't always fat. It's known as the Zapruder film. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. Isn't that the film where the president of our country got shot? If you look around Dallas in 1963, there wasn't a whole lot of fat people walking around. The problem with fat is that it's called fat. Let's say we called fat energy, right? So you ate carbohydrates, protein, and energy. If people say, oh my God, I had a great workout today, I ate my energy, you see, that sounds good, right? But we never say that. We always go, oh, well, if I eat fat, I'm going to get fat, right? It doesn't work that way. You only get fat when you have too much carbohydrates. When you eat fat, you feel sated, and you actually end up eating less.
This burrito is delicious, but it is filling.
Today, in 2017, most of our country is getting fat. We have so many problems associated with being obese as a country that we couldn't even come up with a term, so we just mixed it all in and we called it Metabolic Syndrome. That's right, we now have a term that encompasses everything that became our problem. But in 1963, there was no problem. That was around the same time that a guy named Ancel Keys came on the scene.
The facts are simple. You know the chief killer of Americans is cardiovascular disease, disorders and degeneration of the heart and blood vessels.
You see, right before 1963, Ancel Keys was trying to push this whole idea, eating more sugar and more heart-healthy grains was the way to go. Meanwhile, over in London, there was a guy named John Yudkin, and he was pushing a whole different idea. He was saying we needed to have more red meat, we needed to eat more fish, we needed more vegetables. But we decided that we had to go with one or the other. So what did we do? We went with Ancel Keys. And what did that do? It caused us to eat a ton of sugars and grains. It didn't seem to matter. We made it through the 60s okay. But somewhere in the early 1970s, we had a problem in this country, a big problem. A bunch of storms hit the South, sugarcane production was down, the hurricanes literally obliterated the crop. We already had an addiction to sugar, so we had to do something about it. Our president made a deal with Japan to start bringing in a new product called high fructose corn syrup. It seemed, pretty harmless at the time. It was like sugar, except for the fact that it didn't cost as much. Corn syrup could be used in everything. We started putting it in everything. It just seemed to make good business sense. And that's where our real problem begins, in the 1970s. Because between 1970 and 1980, we started having a real problem with sugar and grain. We decided to come up with a pyramid to show what we should be eating and in what quantities. So at the base of the pyramid, they want us to eat nothing but grains. And then as you go up the pyramid, where it gets more narrow, that's where they want us to have vegetables and fruit. Again, fruit has a lot of sugar. Nothing wrong with fruit, but still they want you to have a lot of grains, a lot of sugar, and some vegetables. And then we get to the top of the pyramid. This is where you have minuscule amount of something. And what that something is meat and fish and eggs and all the good stuff that you should have been eating on the bottom of the pyramid. So if we would just turn the pyramid upside down and eat more fish and meat and then have our vegetables with that, and then at the very top have some grains just to fill it out. That's the way the pyramid should be. Okay, so that pyramid is actually our problem, a big problem. Because you see, we don't get fat from what they told us we get fat from, which is calorie in, calorie out. We get fat from what's at the base of that pyramid, eating too many grains and also too many sugars. And here's why. Whenever we have too much sugar, we get what's called a glucose spike. Our glucose spikes really fast and it comes down. Whenever we eat too many grains, we get what's called a glycogen load. Our glycogen goes up, our sugars go up, just like with the glucose spike, and then it stays up for a long time. There are two other hormones that play into this also. One is called ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hormone that's supposed to make you feel hungry. So when you get that hungry, cavernous feeling in your body, that's ghrelin. That's your brain releasing ghrelin to tell you, hey, it's time to eat something. But guess what? That switch gets dull. We become desensitized to it, so we always feel hungry. The more grains you eat, You can eat a whole family bag of Doritos, and at the end, you're going to still feel hungry. You can eat another bag if it was available. The other hormone that plays in is something called leptin. Leptin is the hormone that's supposed to tell us we're full. But we have a problem there. Same thing. When that switch gets dull and it becomes desensitized, the same thing happens. We never feel full. That's why whenever you go on any kind of diet, any kind of calorie in, calorie out diet, they will explain to you, hey, it's not our diet that failed. It's because you didn't have the discipline to stick to our diet.
For every chocolate mousse I've missed, for every eclair I resist, figurines are sweet revenge.
The 1970s also brought in the burgeoning diet industry. That's when we had all of the diets like the Cambridge diet, and we had Weight Watchers, and many diets like Weight Watchers. And what all of these diets did was they worked on a calorie deficit, also known as calorie in, calorie out. The idea was it didn't matter what you eat because a calorie was a calorie, right? So if you ate fewer calories than you expended, you would actually lose weight. Well, there's a big problem with this because they're basically telling you to run out of energy. Eat all the sugar you want, eat all the grains you want. As long as you burn more calories than you took in grains, you'll be okay. The problem with that is, even if you weigh in the laws of thermodynamics, your body is going to always want to achieve homeostasis. And that is where the problem is, because once you burn up all of your sugar, you have to now put it back on. So now you have this cyclical thing where all you're doing is taking in more grains and sugar and then trying to burn them off. And in the meantime, you're becoming sicker and sicker as you go. So if calorie in, calorie out is not the way you lose weight, then what is? When you take in a lot of sugar and or grains, because they're one and the same, your body has to release insulin to cover it. Type 1 diabetics don't have insulin, they have to inject it. If they don't inject it, they will die. It helps transport the sugar into our bloodstream. It also transports it into our muscle fiber and also a little bit into our liver. Too much grain or too much sugar, it needs to do something else with it because our body can only store one thing, and that's fat. So what does it do? It turns that sugar into a long-chain triglyceride, also known as a fat, and it stores it in your fat cells. And once it's sitting in your fat cells, a long-chain triglyceride has less of a chance of being used as fat.
Wait a minute. Strike that. Reverse it.
And once it's sitting in your fat cells, a long-chain triglyceride has less of a chance of being used as fuel than a medium-chain or a small-chain triglyceride. So it's very important that you don't build up too many of these long-chain triglycerides. There's an entire industry out there that will tell you that eating fat is bad for you. And when they write articles about this, they'll have a big giant thing of a hamburger going, don't eat this, with a big order of fries next to it going, that kind of fat will kill you. And I would agree. You're not supposed to eat stuff from a deep fryer. When I'm talking about fat, I'm not talking about fast food and junk food. I'm talking about healthy fats, the kind you get from fish, the kind you get from good red meat or pork or chicken. That's right, eat the skin too, and don't just eat the white meat. And when it comes to eggs or anything like that, have your eggs and have a yolk in it. Don't eat egg whites. Eat good healthy fats. Avocados, olives, these are the things you want to eat. So let's recap. Calorie in, calorie out does not work. Don't do it. We were told that heart-healthy grains will keep you losing weight and being healthy. We were also told that sugar would not make you fat because, well, in fact, sugar does not have fat in it. But just the opposite is true. The things you want to eat. Red meat. You can have butter, not margarine. Margarine's not good for you. Have real butter. You can have beef. You can have pork. You can have chicken and fish. Enjoy the good foods that are going to keep you sated and make you healthy. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. These will be coming to you from purevitaminclub.com.